I have a photographer that I've worked with in the past, and her profile picture is her with her middle finger up with a ring on it. Now, I would never in a million years ever have that as my picture, but I'll tell you, her ideal client love it. They flock to her, and it rejects people that don't like that, like me, who are very conservative and are like, oh my goodness, she's swearing in a picture. But the people that do like that, she is very successful. So I often think that your client avatar will be a similar version of you, because we tend to attract people that have got a similar kind of energy, similar kind of personality to us. If you've already done some weddings, think about the clients that you've loved working with the most, the people that have really lit you up, the wedding that you're just like, yeah, I want to share that all over social media, and start there.
Becca Pountney, welcome to the Venue RX. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be joining you all the way from the other side of the world.
I am so excited about this. We're going to have a conversation just about that in and of itself, but we're going to dive into a lot of things today, a lot of topics around marketing and stuff like that. And we're going to get way into it, very specific and detailed. And I'm excited to kind of get your take on so many different topics. But before we dive into all of that, for anyone who is new to you or hasn't heard of you, your podcast, or what you do in the industry, or maybe they're just not from the UK, can you let us know a little bit about who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So as we said, I'm based here in the UK, and I'm known here in the UK as the UK's leading wedding industry marketing expert. So my background is in television and radio marketing. That's what my degree was in television. I worked in television and radio. I then had my own wedding business. And out of that, I started helping people with their marketing in the wedding industry. So that's what I do predominantly now. Help people with their marketing through my membership, through my programs, through my podcast, and through speaking on stage, as well as one-to-one consultancy. So for me, my passion is to help people take their business, because so many people in the industry are amazing at what they do. So they're amazing at making flowers. They're amazing at being at a wedding day at a venue, but they're not necessarily amazing at the business side of it and the marketing side of it. And so they can become the best kept secret. So I take those best kept secrets and unleash them to the world.
You put that so perfectly and so succinctly. I love it that you kind of highlighted those two things, because you can be an amazing practitioner and really good at your business, and then you can be good at promotions. It's kind of that product or promotion thing, right? So for wedding pros that you've talked to, professionals in the industry, I mean, obviously this is the Venue RX, we're talking to venue owners, but for pros just across the industry, have you experienced that just people struggle with promoting themselves or kind of learning how to have a better product?
So I think a lot of people fall into this industry. I talk to people on my podcast all of the time, and they just suddenly wake up one day and realize they've ended up in the wedding industry because they're really good at doing flowers. They're really good at being with people. They love it, and they just end up doing it. But they've never really thought, I want to run a business. And so they just don't understand, oh, if I want people to know about my business and to pay me, they need to find out that I exist. So I think there's a lot of struggle with visibility. I think there's a lot of struggle with knowledge and understanding and expectation that people need to be able to do everything. And I always say, yes, I know about marketing. That's what I do. But get me to bake a cake, it will be terrible. Get me to make a floral bouquet, it will be a disaster. So why do you think that you have to be excellent at marketing just like that? In the same way, why would I be good at baking a cake or doing the flowers? So I think that's the big struggle, is people either don't know what they're doing, they lack confidence in what they're doing, or they've got so much expectation of all of these things, all of these platforms, that they end up doing nothing.
Your podcast is called Wedding Pros Who Are Ready, correct?
Wedding Pros Who Are Ready to Grow. Wedding Pros Who Are Ready to Grow.
And I like that, because the growth aspect of this, I think it's interesting. It reminds me of that meme, or maybe it's a reel that I've seen a couple of different times on Instagram, where someone says, you know, we're wedding pros, or we're wedding coordinators, we fill in the blank. And there's a couple of different clips like that. And it seems one of the clips in there was like, we're wedding pros and people ask us what our real job is. And I think for so many people, it does feel like a side hobby or hustle until it isn't, right? Whether it's florals or whether it's DJ cater or whatever, right? I think specifically for people in the venue industry, I know so many venue owners and operators who do something else full time. Maybe they're an accountant, or maybe, you know, they provide some sort of digital service or something else. And then they also live on a property that they use as their venue. So this is like, they wake up one day, to your point, and they're like, oh, hey, we need to market. We need to have all of these departments, and we didn't know that we needed them yet. We didn't kind of get into it with the intention of running a full-scale business. We just knew that we either had the property or we had the skill at the different, sorts of the industry. Let's dive in here. You talk a lot about, on your podcast, you've talked about pricing before, you've talked about everything related to leads, you've talked about a number of different kind of sections. In your experience in the UK, specifically in the UK, is there a specific category or topic that you feel like UK wedding vendors struggle with, maybe a little bit more than your experience with vendors in the other parts of the world?
Confidence. Here in the UK, vendors and venue owners struggle with confidence because we're very British, and therefore we are expected to be like the royal family and sit back and be quiet and be humble and not talk about what makes us great. Whereas what I love when I come to the States is people are confident in what they do. They're happy to talk about it. They're happy to talk to each other for a start. Whereas British people, we don't talk to strangers. We just sit quietly on the bus and don't talk to people. And so I think for the people here in the UK, it's realizing it's okay to say, we're a great venue. We're great at making cakes. And that's not a bad thing. So I think definitely over this side of the world, people struggle with confidence, and they struggle with putting that message out without feeling like they're showing off, and then having that confidence to speak to people confidently, speak to strangers, and not hide behind their screen.
If someone is inconfident, whether they are in the States or in the UK, are there some hacks or some tricks that you've used to help people kind of come out of their shell a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the big things I talk about when it comes to our marketing is being unapologetically yourself. It's a big word, but we can't pretend to be something else. And one thing I see people doing, both in venue space and in wedding pro space, is that they feel like now they're a business, they have to project this really professional business type image through their marketing, through everything. And they don't feel like they can be themselves. They feel like they have to be this like super different version of themselves. And actually, when we just lean in and remember, actually, we are just us, and our couples are going to love us for being us. That's the thing that makes us different to everyone else. When we lean into that and relax, we do so much better. I'll give you an example. So I was working with a wedding planner recently, and she came to me, and I'd met her over a couple of days, and I loved her. She had so much personality. She loved Harry Potter. She loved Lord of the Rings. She loved quirky weddings. She had a brand shoot with a wand. Like, I loved everything about who she was, right? Not my kind of person, but absolutely like amazing. And I knew that there would be brides and grooms who would absolutely love what she did. She asked me to review her website. I went on her website. It was gold and purple, like Cadbury purple, if you know what Cadbury's is here in the UK, and bland. And I just said to her, is this your website? Because what you are and what you've said you are doesn't match this at all. And she said these words to me: that's what I thought a wedding planner website should be. And I was like, oh, interesting. So you feel like you have to be this really bland, professional version of yourself, yet you're oozing with personality. So we had that conversation. She realized she could be herself. And now she's rebuilding her whole website to something that she's really proud of, and is going to be making moves in the industry because she's going to be appealing to people that absolutely resonate with those things as well. So I think it's being unapologetically yourself. And the other part of it is, often people say to me, I don't want to be visible in my marketing. I don't want to put my face out there. I don't want to talk because I'm worried about what they will think. Have you ever had anyone say that to you? I'm worried about what they will think. And one of the things I've learned over the last couple of years is to ask that question: who are they? Who are these imaginary they that we all have in our heads? And actually, when you question someone with that, they're like, oh, actually, yeah, I don't really know. Like, they're just a made up person. And when we can get past that and think, actually, they don't exist, so it doesn't matter what they think, I'm just going to be myself. That's how we break through that confidence barrier.
Becca, I so love this. I was like getting chills when you were talking about that, because it very quickly, in my mind, it connects with sales. I think confidence and sales, people do have a hard time selling themselves and promoting themselves. But even on tours for venues, or even in a sales process and a sales consultation, the confidence to really deliver a compelling offering, and that all revolves around how you feel about yourself, because the voices that are in your head there's going to be a loop going. And if it's a good loop, you're going to have that confidence. If it's a negative loop, you're going to have a completely different energy in the tour, in the sales consultation, whatever. So I don't even want to get there because I want to stay focused on marketing, but I love that you said that. So I heard two things when you were just explaining this about the conversation you had with that woman. I heard that you gave her the permission because she almost had this narrative in her head that like, this is how she had to look. So you said, hey, I'm going to give you, like, you should look different. This is how you could be. You could be yourself. And so that was like you kind of giving her that unlock that you can do it. Like, you've got this, you've got the permission, go for it. So there was that, but then there was also the practicality of her showing up and maybe putting out there that she liked Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and things like that. When you work with people and when you see this transformation happen, how much do people need to be concerned about actually what they're putting out? Like, what should they or should they not put out? Like, how do you filter? Because some people are pretty unhinged, right? Like, is this a carte blanche, do whatever you want and just, put up your life on there? Or where do you draw the line in terms of being yourself and then showing up in a professional way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's an interesting question to ask. And every person's boundaries will be very different. So I always say to my clients, think about your own boundaries. So you don't have to do anything. There'll be some people out there that put their kids on their Instagram like every day. There are some people out there that never want their kids' faces on Instagram, right? There's no right or wrong. That's just how people feel. So you need to first look inward and think, what are you comfortable with? And yes, there is a level of professionalism, but I don't think we can have a prescriptive, you should do this and you shouldn't do that, because actually the same way that we're all different, our couples are all different. Now, another example, I have a photographer that I've worked with in the past, and her profile picture is her with her middle finger up with a ring on it. Now, I would never in a million years ever have that as my picture or necessarily even say to anyone, you should have that as your picture. Like, that's so far out of my comfort zone. But I'll tell you, her ideal client love it. They flock to her, and it rejects people that don't like that. Like me, who are very conservative and are like, oh my goodness, she's swearing in a picture. But the people that do like that, she's very successful. So I think you have to look introspectively, look at your own boundaries, think about how you feel, and think about the people that you want to attract and how they feel about it. And that's why it's important when we're asking people what they think about our brand, that we don't always just ask our friends and family, because they'll always tell us either their really random idea that they're like, oh, you should not do that because XYZ, that's not how a planner looks. Or they'll just tell us what we want to hear, which is, yeah, everything looks great, crack on.
Yeah. I have two questions about this. So one, I'd like to talk about client avatars and like ICP, individual client profile, whatever, however you want to call it, right? ICP, client avatar, whatever, and some strategies maybe for people. How can people develop that? But before we get to that, I'm wondering, I've seen that happen as well. There's a planner in our area that we work closely with, and she's been on the podcast before actually. And it's the same thing. She loves old school hip hop. She's constantly wearing like a Tupac t-shirt. It looks very different than some other planners that we work with, but then she does work with her ideal client. And so it just totally makes sense. It repels the people that she doesn't want to work with and attracts the people she does. What are some ways, and this is kind of getting into the client avatar section, what are some ways that people can discover who they want to serve and who they really will be a fit for if they are just starting out in business or maybe just starting their venue?
Okay, so first of all, I often think that your client avatar will be a similar version of you because we tend to attract people that have got a similar kind of energy, similar kind of personality to us. I also say to people, if you've already done some weddings, think about the clients that you've loved working with the most, the people that have really lit you up, the wedding that you're just like, yeah, I want to share that all over social media, and start there. But also you have to remember, when people are talking about ideal client and ideal avatar, I think people get quite confused because they think, yeah, but I just need money. I just need bookings. I want all of the bookings. And we have to separate the marketing from reality. Okay, so bear with me on this. So if you are marketing yourself and you're saying the people I want are people that want to have a festival style wedding with festoon lighting in the middle of a field, like that's who my ideal client avatar is. Now, that is what your marketing is going to show. So we're going to show what we want to sell. We're going to have great pictures of that kind of wedding. However, if someone calls you up and says, I'm getting married in a manor house down the road and I'm willing to pay your full price, we're not saying, no, sorry, you don't fit my ideal avatar type. Please go away. Of course, we're going to take that work. It would be crazy for us not to take the work. It just doesn't necessarily filter into our marketing. So I think it's important to get that clear, because I think sometimes when we talk about ideal clients, people think that we're saying we can only work with one type of person. That's not true. Now, to give you kind of a broader example, one of the companies I talk about a lot when I talk about marketing is Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola are just amazing at marketing, so they're really good to look at these brands. Now, look at how they market Coke versus Diet Coke versus Coke Zero. So when they brought Diet Coke into the market, it was very much advertised to females. I don't know if you have the same adverts in the US, but we used to have this man like with no clothes on pouring Diet Coke over himself. And it's like, if you drink Diet Coke, you're going to attract a man like that, right? Now, they were advertising to women. So then they went ahead and they got Coke Zero, which is essentially the same drink, but they put it in a black packaging and they advertised it to men because they realized men didn't want to be seen by Diet Coke with Diet Coke. They wanted something different. However, if my husband goes to the shop to buy a Diet Coke, they're not saying, no, you must not drink this because you are a man and this is for women. It's just the way that they market the drink. So it's the same in our businesses. We need to think about how we're showing what we want in our marketing rather than thinking that means we can only serve one kind of customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's so clear. I'm wondering for venues. So there's a difference with venues. Venues are selling space. Space is really locked. To your point, the manor down the road, a planner can take their business and go to the manor down the road. They can go to the field. They can go, wherever they want to go. Their services are needed, right? With a venue, it's a little bit more landlocked. So with that said, how do you make sure you're not kind of pigeonholing yourself into one client and not only speaking to that one and like rejecting those other clients that you still might want?
Okay, so a client has to see what you're trying to sell in order to want to buy it. Okay, so if you're always putting out the same imagery of your venue, say you're a barn wedding venue and you just put all of the same rustic style imagery out all of the time, then you're going to keep attracting those same kind of people. If you want to attract a different sector of the market, well, get some photos, get some imagery of something completely different and start putting that out as well, because then people won't just say, oh, these people only do rustic weddings. I don't fit into that category, therefore I can't go there. They see, oh, wow, actually what I want to achieve, this industrial style wedding or this boho theme, oh, I can see that in that venue. I can see how that can work. I can see how that can look. Therefore, I will make contact with them. So we find that couples, they're not very imaginative. They don't necessarily know what they want. Like one of the questions that couples hate being asked is, so what do you want for your wedding? Because they don't know. They might have some grand ideas, but they don't really know. Whereas if we start to show them something, then they want that. So if you suddenly decided you wanted to have loads of Gothic inspired weddings, if you started putting out photo shoots of brides in black dresses or really alternative decor in your venue, you will start to attract more of those people. That's how marketing works.
A question about that then, and kind of how, so going back to the venue side of things, what happens if someone's brand new and they don't know, like they just opened their space maybe, they don't really have an idea, like they have an idea of the type of client they would like to work with, like from an imagination perspective, but they haven't necessarily experienced that yet. Would you say go to the dollar and get some clients in the door without a care about who they are so you can kind of get some experience under your belt? Or would you say develop a pretty neatly packaged client avatar and just focus on that one and hold out until you get those?
Okay, so I would say go to Pinterest. That is one of my favorite things for people to use, because anyone who's in a venue will have an idea of the kind of person that they want, even if they don't think they have an idea of the kind of person they want, okay? So I say to people, whether you're a pro, whether you're a venue, whatever it is, go to Pinterest, start a Pinterest board. Imagine the dream booking comes to your venue next week. What do you imagine in your head it's going to look like? And start pulling together images onto a board of how you picture this looking. And then that will give you some kind of guidance to what your overall marketing should look like. So then I say to people, well, if you were then to add a picture to your Instagram from your venue, would it succinctly fit within this dream Pinterest board that you've built? Or does it look out of place? If it looks out of place, maybe it's not the right thing to go with. Now, again, we can develop that over time. We can evolve, we can shift. But I think realistically, everyone kind of knows that if you dig deep and ask the questions, do you just want anyone to get married here? No, actually, I want people that have a certain amount of money, or I want people that are going to have this kind of wedding. I don't want huge weddings, or I don't want really small weddings. People have an idea. They just don't always know how to
I love that Pinterest tip, because something that also is very curious to me about this industry is we are always getting older, but our clients are staying essentially the same age or within the same age range, right? And so for someone who's maybe, I know you originally said, you want to think about yourself, kind of like, what would you buy? What would you be interested in? But at the same time, your style, your tastes are going to be changing, and you need to understand, you need to get feedback from the market. So Pinterest, okay, that's huge. Help me a little bit with understanding, what is your marketing stack? Like, what tools are you using, and what tools would you recommend a venue use? Tools meaning like Instagram, Facebook, Google My Business, whatever else.
Okay, so first of all, you want to work out. So once we've worked out who we're speaking to, we want to work out where they're hanging out. And again, to your point, where they're hanging out isn't necessarily always where you like hanging out. And that is sometimes a barrier that we have to get over, especially I find with venues. Sometimes they're like, oh, we just really like Facebook. We don't want to go on Instagram. We don't want to go on TikTok. We're happy with Facebook. It's like, okay, well, we do need to look at the data, and we need to look at some of these big surveys that people like the Not do. We have them here in the UK. We have a UK wedding report where they ask couples where they're planning their wedding. And so we have to go with that data. And we know that Instagram, and as much as it pains me to say it, TikTok, they are increasing, and Facebook is decreasing. So I think Instagram and TikTok, definitely couples are turning to. That's definitely where I recommend people start to venture into. And then it's just going to depend really on you, because there's not one size fits all. Directories, I mean, we could have a whole hour conversation about whether directories are good or not good. Again, I think it totally depends on your strategy. It depends on your venue, whether or not to look into them. But if you're new and you just want to get in front of a bunch of people, it could be a great way to do it. One of the other marketing tools, which I don't think we talk about enough, and I definitely recommend to venues all of the time, is our networking, our supplier networking. The venue supplier relationship, or the venue vendor relationship, if you're out in the States, is so crucial. And I think venues don't always think about how important it is that their vendors are out there in the world talking to couples about them, both good and bad. So if you own a venue, you kind of have some power, because you have a space and you're one of the first places that people book. So vendors want to work with you. They want to be in relationship with you. And you could do something as simple as, put on a drinks event. We do that here sometimes in the UK. Get your venue, just put on a drinks event and invite all of the local vendors in the area to come and check out your venue. That's going to be great, because they're going to be producing their own Instagram content about you, their own TikTok content about you. They're going to be having a great experience. It's not going to cost you a lot of money. You're just going to open up a space and maybe give them one drink, then open the bar, make some money on that. And they're going out into the world and talking about you. And people talking about you is the lowest cost form of advertising, and it's the most powerful. So out of all of the marketing you could be doing, I think that's the one people are missing that's really powerful.
That's so good. And I'd love to come back to that. I have one or two more questions about Instagram and TikTok, but I'm so glad that you highlighted that, because I think especially for venues, they have the capability of doing that, whereas other vendors in the industry may not, just because of the lack of space. Like if you're a DJ, you have to go find a venue and say, hey, let's do it at your space. And that could totally work. I'm not saying that wouldn't work, but the venue, it's built in, right? So that's excellent. So great. Becca, I'm a wedding pro. I'm a vendor, venue, whoever. And I'm listening to you right now, and I'm like, okay, I've been posting on Instagram. I've done a couple of TikToks. I've thrown a couple of TikToks up there. And I'm not really seeing conversions. I'm not really seeing conversations starting. I'm just posting some of these pretty pictures, maybe from styled shoots, right? What gives? Like what's going on? What's going on with my marketing? Why isn't it working? What's your answer to that?
Okay, a few different things. First of all, don't get overwhelmed by the numbers, because often when people say something isn't working, it's because it's only been seen by 100 people. But if I said to you, tomorrow you can stand in front of 100 people and tell them all about your venue, you'd go, great. Thanks, Becca. Thanks for that opportunity. But I think we've got this idea in our psyche that we need to be reaching the thousands and the millions in order to be making an impact. But actually, we're after a very small niche. We're after just our local people, especially if we're a venue. So we don't need to get worried about that. The other thing you need to think about is the fact that we know, again, from the research, that Gen Z are savvy shoppers. That means they're doing their research and they are looking everywhere. So it is highly likely that they are looking at your Instagram, looking at your TikTok, and then your website. So they may inquire via your website. You may not even realize that they've been looking at the other places, but they do. And we all do this. I don't know if you've ever done this yourself, Jonathan, where you're talking to a business, maybe on email, and you go and check them out on Instagram, and there's nothing there, and it's a disaster. And you're like, do they even exist? Like, is this a real business? Have they gone out of business because they haven't posted anything for 6 months? Now, I was never going to contact them on Instagram, but I'm just going to do a bit of research to see what they're up to. So I think sometimes we put too much weight on these social platforms. We think we need these big numbers. We think we need direct messages coming left, right, and center. But actually, Instagram, TikTok, they are shop windows, right? Imagine you're on a high street. They are shop windows that are just trying to attract people to come in. The website's where you're going to convert them, and then the show round when you get them face to face. So just as long as you're being attractive, you're showing that you're open, you're showing people what you do, you're inspiring people, then they will see that, they'll know you're active, they'll come via your website, get the information, and then come through to inquire.
That was powerful. I love that. And that's so actionable for people too. Let's go one layer further, just quickly on Instagram and TikTok. What types of content would you recommend that people post on there? Say if someone's a venue, are they doing dances? Are we just posting pretty pictures of the space? What is it? What's the strategy?
Okay, so I think your content needs to be a variety. So you need to educate, you need to inspire as well, and then you obviously need to sell. Now, if all we ever do is sell, no one will ever follow us. It's boring. If we just keep saying, I've got this offer, I've got this, it costs this much, like, it's boring. But a lot of people in the wedding industry never sell. We go too far the other way. We just put up the pretty pictures and forget to tell people to take action. So we do need to add that in there. We need to educate. We need to tell people about this thing about getting married and planning a wedding that they do not understand. So things like your frequently asked questions on your website, if you're a venue, just take every single one that you've got that anyone's ever asked you and turn each of them into a post on Instagram, because you're answering questions that may be obvious to you, but these people are planning their wedding. And then we need to inspire as well. That's what we talked about earlier, making sure we're showing your spaces at their best with professional imagery, not dodgy photos you've taken on your phone, because people need to fall in love with your space when they see the pictures. They need to imagine themselves there. And I think it's important as well as a venue that you don't show too many photos of couples. Like, it's really easy for us to just show loads of photos of couples. But actually, people want to imagine themselves getting married in your venue. They don't care that this person got married in your venue. They want to imagine it's only ever them that's going to get married in that place. And I think we fall into that trap because we have these beautiful pictures of couples, but actually they want to see the space. They want to see how it could work, and they want to see ideas of decor and how it could work for their day.
That, again, so actionable, so powerful. I'm so glad you said that about the spaces, because I see venues a lot of times doubling down on content that is user generated, right? It's the couple that comes in and they take their photos there, and then the photographer sends the set of photos, and then they upload those photos, and it's a lot of detail shots because it was bought and paid for by the couple to highlight the couple, and there's just framing of the venue. And so it doesn't allow that new, like, they aren't picturing their face on the other person necessarily. They're just trying to look around the person to see what, where am I going to get married? Oh, that's that, section of the building that they were talking about or whatever. So I'm so glad you highlighted that.
And this comes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier, because this is a problem venues have. But if you build on what we talked about earlier, if you build relationships, like genuine relationships with your suppliers, if you make friends with your photographers, then when you know they're coming to your venue, you can ask them for the kind of content you want. Like, if you get a moment, can you just get a wide shot of the room with no people in it? Can you get some big crowd shots? Because they will want to do that for you because you've treated them well, because you've invited them to the venue, because you've built and nurtured this relationship. And then you can get the content you want. So this is how it all starts to weave together.
So brilliant. I'll tell you a quick story. When we were doing staffing, because we started doing staffing and supplying bartenders and servers and things like that, prior to getting into the venue management. I would go and I would be one of the servers or bartenders, and I needed content. But as a bartender server, I didn't want to be out there on my phone, like trying to take pictures of the team. So I would go to the bar. I would leave the bar, during a quiet moment and go to the photographer and just tell them, hey, I'm trying to get content of my thing, whatever. And usually I would try to take care of them in some way first. Hey, can I get you something to drink or something like that? So you're giving first. To your point, you've invited them to the venue for drinks, right? And then I'd say, hey, do you mind just grabbing a couple photos, couple shots? And for the longest time, the photos that were on our Yelp and on our website and all of that were just quick photos that the photographer had snapped for us as a favor, sent them through, and they were high quality. And I could have never afforded to pay that photographer to come out. It never would have happened. So that's brilliant. I love that. So cool. So let's talk about the in-person side, because this has all been the digital side of things, right? So let's talk a little bit about the in-person. What's your take on bridal shows, meet and greets, kind of like physical stuff that, where vendors gather together or where you're trying to gather together to meet couples?
Okay, so I believe that the generation that's starting to get engaged now, that younger generation, are wanting that in-person connection again. I think, the dreaded lockdowns when we were all behind screens, we all work from home, we're all behind screens all of the time. People are actually craving opportunities to get together in person. So I don't think we should neglect those. As we said before, a venue is a perfect space. You should be inviting people into your venue. Yes, you could go to a wedding show, but actually, really, you standing there with a banner and a picture of your venue is nothing compared to getting those people into your venue. We know, and I'm sure you say this all the time, Jonathan, that the couples need to basically fall in love with the venue the moment they step through the door. Like it's a decision. It's like when we go and buy a house, we know almost immediately as we step through the door, this isn't for me or it is. So if we can find ways to encourage couples to step through those doors so they fall in love with the space, that's always going to be more powerful than any picture on Instagram, any video on TikTok, or even being at a wedding show with a banner and a photo of your venue. So absolutely, you should be doing stuff in person, both for couples, showing them around, but also having these open days, because I think you're kind of like getting lots of work done in one go if you can have lots of people in at the same time, rather than having to keep doing lots and lots and lots of tours. And also, as I said earlier, getting vendors in. And again, once you start building those relationships, get them to style the room when people come for the show rounds. Get them to provide cake for people when they come around. Get them to be part of that event, because when we work together, it all becomes more powerful.
That's great. You were saying that, and I had this spontaneous question that just popped into my head. So how important do you feel like the business owner is versus the business offering to the transaction for today's buyer?
I think 50-50. I think people need to fall in love with the person that's selling to them as much as they need to fall in love with the venue, because we've all had that experience where we go somewhere amazing. So say you go to an amazing restaurant for the most amazing meal in the most amazing setting, but the server is rude to you or doesn't care about you or leaves you till last. All of a sudden, you're like, I don't like this place anymore, even though everything else about it has been amazing. So from the moment that someone meets you as a person, they need to get that vibe, they need to get that energy, and they need to know that you care about them. We need to treat every single couple that walks through our door as if they're the first couple that's ever got engaged or ever got married in our venue. Because for them, this is their one and only time. For most people, that they've done this. And so if we treat them like, oh yeah, we get 10 people getting married here every week, and we have couples coming around all of the time, and here's this tour again that I do all of the time, they will feed off of that and they won't feel special. Whereas you can do small things when a couple walk in for a show round to make them feel $1 million. Here's an example that I get people to do sometimes. Again, I don't know if this is what you teach your venues, but people want to feel special instantly. So if they walk into your venue for a tour and you say to them, do you want a drink? Just go sit down there for a minute while I go get you a drink. Like, that's not a great experience, because they're walking in and then they're just like sat there awkwardly waiting for you to come back and get them a drink. How much better is it if you know they're a good quality couple, that they walk in that door and you hand them a drink the minute they walk through the door, as if that's exactly what they would do on their wedding day, right? You would hand them that drink, and there's a little paper sign that you've printed out and put in a frame that says, welcome to the future Mr. and Mrs. X. right? That experience is like 10 million times better than just walking in, sitting on a sofa and waiting for a drink to come. When you make people feel special, then they're like, this is amazing. Because I know you're going to offer them that level of service on the day, but if they don't get it on the tour, they won't necessarily think they're going to get it on the day.
Totally. They're going to assume that they're going to get the same level of service. And Becca, I think you have a point here. I think sometimes, depending on where we're at in our business journeys, that might be the level of service that we are going to give them on their day, right? Crazy as that is to say, maybe that's something that needs to be audited, right? And if you're worrying about tour conversions or something like that, just audit the experience that you're giving people on the way in. And to your point, making them feel special like that. Could you give me some other examples of ways that you could, like, let's say someone says, well, I can't offer them alcohol, or, well, I'm going to have back-to-back-to-back tours because it's hard for me to tour. So like, how am I going to switch the papers out? Like, do you have some other tips or tricks that maybe venue owners specifically can make couples feel special when they come tour?
Okay. Very simple one is a postcard. I love a postcard. Everyone loves getting handwritten posts. So get a bunch of postcards printed with some really nice phrase on the front, like you're getting hitched or something like that with your logo on it. Every time someone books a tour, write them a handwritten card that says, to so-and-so and so-and-so, we're so excited to meet you when you come tour your future wedding venue. Love, whoever. Post it out, send it out. They will love it. Why? Because no one else is sending them physical posts. Everyone else is bombarding them with email. You will stand out a mile. They'll probably take a photo of it and put it on their Instagram. And before they've even walked through your venue, they already feel special. A couple of other examples of things that I know venues here do. There's one venue that will let their couples stay over the night before a tour, and then they don't pay anything if they book the wedding. So they can go stay at the venue the night before the tour. It's complimentary if they book the wedding. Okay, so that's kind of like, so it's like a try before you buy. If you want to experience what this venue's like come and stay on us, and if you book this wedding venue, then we won't charge you for the overnight stay. Another thing that one of my clients has been doing, and I love this as well. She told me about this recently. So when their couples choose to get married at the venue, they say to them on their 1-year anniversary, they'll get a complimentary overnight stay to come back and revisit their venue. Now, not only do they give them that stay, when they go into their room, that 1-year anniversary, the venue has printed a photo from their wedding day and put it in a frame to say, welcome back. Like, isn't that incredible? And that tiny little act, they said it takes them like 10 minutes to just print off a photo and put it in a frame. That couple is going to be talking about you on social media to their friends for days, months, and years and saying, you have to get married here because you won't believe that they did this, this, and this, and they made us feel so special.
And like you said before, word of mouth is the most powerful and oftentimes the least expensive. So that's incredible.
Free. Most of the time is very free.
Yeah. Becca, that's such good actionable advice. I want to wrap today up by talking just a little bit about personal branding because, you've done a wonderful job yourself, right? Of personal branding. You have a podcast, you're active on social media, got a beautiful website, some of these different things. Do you think that it is crucial to success for venues, maybe venue owners or just even vendors in general, planners, DJs, et cetera, to focus at all on personal branding or to focus more on kind of sharing the story of what their business does?
I think that every business needs to bring themselves to the front of their brand if they are a small business. So if you're a small venue team, if you're an independently owned venue, if you're an independent business, bring yourself to the forefront. Why? Because you are the only thing that makes that business different to the people down the road, right? You can have 2 identical products, but you are very different people. And one of the pushbacks I get from venues a lot is, we can't do the personal branding thing because we're a team. But it's like, well, why don't we bring some of the team to the front and center of the wedding business? Now, we were talking offline about how I have this visibility bootcamp that we're going to link to underneath. And just last week, I had someone from the States, a venue from the States, they went through the visibility bootcamp and they posted, because as part of it, I say, post and tag me in it so I can see what you're doing. And she posted a photo of her outside of the venue and she was like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I wanted to put my face on here because I'm the person that will show you around on the tour, that will deal with all the contracts, that will be there on the wedding day and will be there the day after to tidy up. So I wanted you to see me and know my face and know what I'm about. And I love that because immediately something that's kind of like closed doors venue immediately came to life because I'm like, I want to go meet her. She seems nice. She seems like she's got personality. It's going to be her. She obviously cares about her couples because she's there all the way through the process. And that very small act of putting that team member on the social media page was really powerful. So don't say, I'm a venue, we can't. Like, celebrate your team, bring people to the forefront, showcase the people that are there on the day because, you know, they're the people that are going to make the magic happen on the wedding day itself.
I love that. I have a kind of maybe a tricky question. What do you do if you're not the person, like if you, the owner, are not the person that's going to be showing the property? It's a team and maybe that team rotates. Maybe there's turnover. Maybe you have to fire somebody. Do you think that if you have a team in place, you shouldn't be doing some of this, like showcasing and shouting your team out for fear that maybe the person that is on social media today is not going to be there in 6 months?
I think we overthink it, right? I think we overthink it massively because if you put a picture of two girls or two guys or whatever it is on the screen, it's like, we're a friendly team. We make sure that everything, you know, looks after. This is Becca and this is Jane and they're always here and they'll welcome you. Like if on the day it's someone else, they're not thinking on that Instagram post 6 months ago, they said it was good. Don't care. But what they do care about is that your friendly faces, that you care about them. So again, I just think we way overthink so much of this stuff and we worry about what they will think, going back to my earlier point, and actually like bring them to the front. Even if you don't name them, even if you just have smiley, happy faces. You know, the amount of Instagram feeds I go to in the wedding industry, which are just picture after picture after picture of products or spaces and no faces. We know that pictures with faces get more action on social media than anything else. I have another thing that I do where I get people to just out of their comfort zone, post a picture of their face on their social media. And without fail, it always gets more interaction than any of their previous posts. Because as we scroll, we see a face and it makes us stop. Because humanly, we like seeing faces. And if it's a face we recognize, even more so. And if you go on my Instagram, my husband laughs at me because he's like, all you're ever doing is sharing pictures of your face. And I'm like, I know it's embarrassing, but people like seeing my face because it reminds me of a time we had a conversation. It reminds them of, you know, something we did and it puts me top of mind and it works. So like I say, a face should be every 9 on the Instagram grid. Someone's face needs to be there. Ideally you or one of your team.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not necessarily another couple's face who got married there, but someone from your team. Becca, I love that. This has been so fun. And the tips and some of the advice you share is really actionable. And I feel like there are a lot of key takeaways for people. What was that resource that you just mentioned? I know we talked about linking it, but could you just tell the name of it for everyone? Because it's something that's available right now for people, right?
Yeah, so I have a Wedding Pro Visibility Bootcamp. It's an audio bootcamp. So you can listen to it, like you can binge it. So you can listen to it as a podcast. It's a private podcast. You can listen to it through. And each day it goes through 5 steps. And each day it will give you a learning, a teaching, and then it will give you a task to go away and do. So it will say, here's what I've just taught you. Now, this is what you should implement. And if you're really good, and lots of people do this, you can send it to me and I will give you feedback. I think people don't believe that I will, so they don't always do it. But, you know, it'll say like, send me a description of your business using the things we've talked about and I'll tell you what I think. And I will tell you what I think. So yeah, go and grab that. It's free to get. You can listen to it either all in one go or over a series of 5 days. Do the task and see what happens. I always say, if you don't try it, how will you know whether it'll work or not?
I love that. Becca, this has been so much fun. Thank you for coming on today and sharing. And if people want to find you, maybe they're interested in working with you or maybe just asking you questions or learning more about some of the topics that you've talked about today, where is the best place to reach out?
Okay, so I hang out a lot on Instagram. So Instagram DM is always the quickest place to get me if you've got a quick question. At Becca Pountney, it's just my name. Or go to the website, contact me anywhere. There's not many people, we were saying before, with the surname Pountney. So as soon as you write Becca Pountney into Google, you will just see me everywhere. So reach out. I'd love to chat and I would love to talk to you more. Even if it's just a little question about something I've said, or if it's that confidence thing where you're like, can I really do this? And you just want someone to go, yeah, you can. Then ask me and I will send you that positivity right.
Beautiful. And that's Becca, Becca Pountney, Pountney.
Yes,
Beautiful.
it is.
Beautiful. Okay. So BeccaPountney.com, and I love it. Awesome. Thank you. This has been so much fun. I've learned a lot. It was so great meeting you at Wedding MBA where we connected, and I love what you're doing in the UK and how you're impacting the industry. So thanks for coming on the Venue RX.
Thank you for having me.